Hi everyone, today's video is a comparative diagram looking at the similarities and differences between a key space in a building and a painting. This can also be a concept diagram for your design, so let's get started. First thing I started with is modeling the painting, which was so much fun because you kind of have to gauge around with proportions and looking at details such as artifacts and furnishings, and it was quite interesting to kind of test out this style of architecture that I've never done before. So I started with creating the wall, trying to get the arch quite right. And then I thought of a better solution, which was to add the image and rotate it to fit my perspective and then kind of scale it around to get the image and the space. So then I don't really have to gauge so much into that space. Building the walls and then starting to build this study space. The reason for this diagram was trying to understand Studiolo aspect of the space, using furniture as a way to define a space. And there was a modern intervention in London, it's called the Hult Business School, and they've used a similar idea in their design. So this is kind of a diagram looking at comparing the both two together and looking at the typology of Studiolos. So again, it was quite really fun looking at the details of the space and proportions. I won't go into too much detail about this because I know that everyone will have a different painting, different inspiration. It really depends on your inspiration image. I'm just gonna continue modeling everything, all of the walls, the arches, the Studiolo, and then went into more detail about the Studiolo aspect. And what I also found was really helpful is that you can also take a screenshot of it, add it into Photoshop, and then lay over the original image so that you can see if there's any differences. The more details that you pick up on this, I feel the more that you learn from the space. And this is kind of the space once it's all done and finished. I'm pretty proud of this, to be honest, and I thought it was such a fun exercise that I would 100% recommend. Even if, for example, your building is not inspired by paintings, or you can just test this out, and kind of making models of spaces really kind of helps you understand the little details and how materials kind of join in together. Then I've just added the modern intervention on the left side and then raised up the Studiolos. And then I turned it into a hidden line style, and it kind of makes the image or the diagram look a lot cleaner and more professional. And then I also added the beams on the ceiling, which at first I didn't really think is relevant, but actually the exposed beams really do add to the character of the space. So do make sure if you have any structure that is exposed or any servicing in your diagram, because it does add to the character. So once that's all done, I've then exported it as a PDF and added it into Illustrator. So unfortunately the image doesn't export with it, which I really wished it did, but it didn't. But these are the two spaces side by side, and then you can go and change the similarities into red so that it's quite clear what are you trying to show, because I get a lot of comments from people saying that their diagrams don't really show what they're trying to say. And I think highlighting things and thinking about hierarchy in your diagrams is very key to kind of getting your ideas across. You can also go back in and clean the lines, and that is why I love Illustrator so much, because you can then do these really simple edits which comes out a lot cleaner than Photoshop. But I'm also going to add it in Photoshop. All I do to add it into Photoshop is copy and paste, and then I paste it as a smart object, only really to add that image. But I want to turn this into an isometric view, and to do that it's really quite easy. If you go to the top and you change the angle to 30 and minus 30 and experiment between 30, 30, minus 30, minus 30, you kind of get a different orientation or a different isometric view, and then from that you can then add that to the image. I also then went to add some textures and materials because that's also kind of a similarity between the two, and I've used isometric textures which I'm still testing out, but I think you can download them online, but these ones I've done myself. They're not quite seamless, so I'm still trying to come up with the best approach to creating seamless isometric textures. So once I do, I'll definitely share that. this is the final diagram once it's done. It was quite easy and quite a fun exercise. I don't think I've ever had so much fun creating a diagram before, and I feel like it has that artistic aspect to it since it's inspired by painting, but just overall the composition. So I do just want to point out some of the similarities if you guys are interested in how the architects, which were Sergison Bates Architects, and how they've used the typology of Studiolo into the modern intervention. So first of all, the materials chosen. So in the painting, you can see that the walls were made out of stone. Now, the modern intervention, the building already had existing brick walls, which they could have chosen to cover up or add the timber finish on top, but they left it as it is. The second thing is the arched windows. So this was existing, but again, the third thing is the sense of depth. As you can see from that space or the studiolo and its position, there's kind of an archway and it kind of leads into a corridor of spaces, which this diagram doesn't really show for the modern intervention, but it does if you kind of look at the plans of the building. The next aspect is of course the studiolo, so using furniture to kind of define a space, so room within rooms, and then also the exposed structure. So again, they could have added a drop ceiling to hide that structure, but they've chosen to expose it. So I hope this diagram kind of showed you that you can kind of take ideas from paintings and old buildings, and it doesn't have to be accurate. I feel like a lot of people are scared to kind of hint at things, but you can do that most definitely in architecture. So the modern intervention is not identical to the Studiolo typology, but that's the whole point of architecture, is to kind of add your own twist to it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that it encourages you to look at art more in your buildings and kind of see what kind of spaces that you can create in your buildings that kind of modernizes the typology of what you're trying to create. I hope you guys are doing well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram. I'm Rasha Shururu, and I'll see you next time.